dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki rola pinchre sange drupra sho sange chodan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki rola pinchre sange drupra sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good evening. First of all, can you just turn down the volume a little bit? First of all, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. After how many weeks has it been since I've been here? It's been 3 weeks, hasn't it? Okay. It was a condition that happened. I mean, the first week that week I was supposed to come, and I couldn't come because I was COVID positive, and I asked Geshe Chanchup to come. And Geshe Chanchup came. He gave teachings last Wednesday, two weeks ago. He wasn't shy is not the right word, but he didn't want to do the streaming, so he was a little bit shy. But for all of those of you who were present, you were very happy, and I'm very happy about that. I mean, these are people who are part of the center. I mean, Geshe Gyaltsen, Geshe Losampunsuk, and in Albagnano. I mean, they have an experience of a lifetime of practice and study, and it's really important also to create conditions for them so that they can share with us. This is important for all of us. And so in Tibetan we say Kenya Druksha, which means when situations, there's adverse situations, become favorable. So something that's not good, but then it transforms, and we use that to do something else that's favorable. So Geshe Lahu came here, and also the retreat in Albagnano, I was supposed to lead it, and together with instead Geshe Chanchu and Geshe Losampunsuk, they guided, and it went really well. I'm fine. I think that you can see that, but it's important also to say so. I had a fever for a couple days, a little bit tired, but I took advantage to rest and to read. Anyway, today I wanted to start with a very important concept. I heard something the other day, a phrase that had me reflect, but I wanted to connect with this, starting with something else, which is, it's a short story. It's a short Hebrew story. It said that once a family, the wife, she goes to the rabbi to talk about the problems she was having in her family. So she goes to the rabbi, and I don't know, how it is in big cities, but in many smaller realities, I mean, like in Tibet, the rabbi was the friend, the spiritual guide, did everything really. And so she goes to her rabbi and said, "I have a problem with my husband because he does this, that, and the other." And she's just gives a whole story, telling her side of the story, complaining. And he says, "You're right." And after a little while, the husband goes to the rabbi. And he goes to the rabbi and says, "Have you heard about my wife? Because she did this and she did that, and this happened and that happened. I needed to do this and that and this happened." And at the end, the rabbi said, "You're right." And after a while, both go together. And they say, excuse, Rabbi, we're fighting between ourselves. You know, I went and I told my side of the story. You told me I was right, and then the other one goes and you tell him that he's right too. We can't both be right. And he answers, you're right. Instead, I always liked this story. And there is a basis of verity, a basis of truth here. But let's make it even more precise. I mean, first one goes and tells his side of the story. You're right. Why are you right? Because it's your experience. It's your subjective experience in face of that, reality. And I'm not going to negate that. You lived that, and you experienced that. So you're upset about this and that, and that's real for you. And on the other side, the other person tells his subjective reality, and who lived, another reality that he lived and experienced, and he's right too. And we can't both be right. But instead, on a deeper level, that's not true, because normally when there's any kind of conflict, it is because both are right, and this is the real difficulty here. Because when we're in the middle of a conflict, what's our tendency? To want to understand the other, or want to impose our version of reality onto the other? Let's not go far. Let's just look at our daily small conflicts. I observe, something happens, something small happens. Oh, why this, that? I mean, you said this, the other one did like that. And our tendency, what is it? Is to become defensive, to try to justify our actions, try to understand that I try to make the other one understand that it's not the way he sees it. And there's a phrase that I heard, there's something that I heard that made me really reflect, and it says that a conflict shouldn't win, but it should be, we shouldn't win a conflict. If I do like this and I stay fixed on my point of view, and I need to convince you of my point of view, so that my position is the victorious one, the winner. But to do that, it often there are many negative side effects that the many things that we destroy to be able to claim victory when there's conflict. When there's conflict, the first thing, or the priority very often, is to find the common ground. It is not about winning the argument, the conflict. I don't know if this is clear, because this meeting ground is where neither one wins, neither one loses in this common ground. I give you. I see that you're right here. You see that I'm right there, and we see that in the end that the truth is between both realities, and I respect your point of view, your subjective reality, and if you do the same for me, then we can walk closer together and find this common meeting point. But it's important to start with really simple daily things. Don't think about great conflicts right away, because these big conflicts, normally they've constructed over time, wounds after wounds that build up, and then it becomes very complex to try to resolve. such a conflict. But let's remember that big does not exist without small. It's made of many small things. So let's start with the small daily conflicts, and how do we face them? And this is one concept, and we're going to keep it. I'm going to keep it here on the sidelines, and let's go to another one. Once I went to a doctor. Actually, we were at lunch together. It was at a conference in Madrid that Lama Gangchen used to organize every year. More than 25 years of conferences in Madrid, and then these last couple of years it didn't happen. Even before COVID, for various reasons. Anyway, one of the years I was there, there were different doctors there, and there was this relatively young Spanish doctor, and he was he was an allopathic doctor, but he had also had a degree in Chinese medicine, etc. And so I was at lunch. I was talking about some health problems I was having at the time, and he asked me what I like to eat more than anything else. I don't remember what my answer was at the time, but he said to me, when the body is in a state of health, is in balance, the body is attracted to what maintains that balance. Instead, when that body is sick and is out of balance, the body is attracted to what increases this imbalance. So when a patient comes to me, I mean, when a new patient comes to me and I ask them what they like to eat, like watermelon, for example, and you say that you love a watermelon, then the first thing I say is that you should stop eating watermelon, because if you're sick and you like that, that's something that's increasing your imbalance. And it made me think about many other aspects. I mean, just imagine, for example, it made me think about a scale, So we have these two sides of this scale. When an object is balanced, where does the weight go towards the does it go towards the balance or imbalance? It goes towards balance. So when an object is balanced, for it to stay balanced, then you shouldn't change what you're doing. You continue in that same way. But instead, when there's imbalance, so the natural force goes towards that imbalanced state. So it's falling on one side. So it's just going to keep going, farther and farther in imbalance. But if my lifestyle is balanced, and then I feel like that the object is starting to get imbalanced, I need to do the opposite. Put energy in the opposite direction. Let me give you an example. We know someone, we have, be it at work or, within a couple, our children or, in our family. Just think about a relationship. And at a certain point, that person is nervous. Something's happened. He wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. He saw something and made him think about something negative, and then speaks to us aggressively. I mean, this can happen, can't it? So there was balance, and then when that person then speaks to us aggressively, there's no more harmony, and so we've lost the balance. So our natural tendency, our spontaneous tendency towards someone who speaks to us in an aggressive manner, our tendency is to speak in the same way. But if that object is losing balance, and then I respond with aggression, I'm using the same force. So there's this, if my objective is to be if my objective is to be imbalanced with that person, then I'm doing the right thing. Instead, if I want to find again that harmony with that person, I need to do the opposite thing. I mean, it's more difficult at that moment, but it's what brings a better result. It becomes easier at, mid and long term, and then it'll use up a lot less energy. But if we have just a little bit of wisdom and we're able to see beyond just the point of our nose, the tip of our nose, see beyond a little bit. And I'm not talking about being, the bodhisattva, the situation, being altruistic. I mean, just selfishly speaking, it's better to be in harmony with someone or to better be in conflict. It's better to be in harmony. And what uses up more energy? What generating harmony or managing a conflict? At the end of the day, what's more costly? Energetically speaking, I mean, just in our life's resources, it's more costly to manage conflict. We all agree, don't we? So we need to be careful that when we are at a point where a conflict is coming out, let's remember that our natural tendency, not because we're bad, but naturally our tendency is to fall as we're falling down, we pull down and we react with that same energy. And instead, we need to put energy in the opposite way, which means you act with aggression. I accept that, And if you're acting with aggression, it means you're not well. And somehow you're showing a suffering that you have. And so if I want to have harmony, it's important to accept you. And then we can talk about it, sometimes, and I've already found myself in situations where I've had to give a limit saying, okay, I love you and all the rest, but I won't go beyond this limit because otherwise we can't maintain that balance. Okay, there was that moment of reaction, but you need to understand that there's a limit. But just open and close the parentheses here, but it's important because we learn how to relate with each other based on the reactions that we find. So, and as human beings, there are three main forces that push us towards doing or not doing something. I can do in this way or do in another way. There's a very basic. It's almost seems overly simplified, but we are simple beings, and the three forces that push us to do something, or to act in one way or another. One, the benefits we have in doing something, so the rewards that we receive, the advantages, let's say, of doing that thing, and we avoid doing things when we see that the defects. And then maybe the third one, we think, okay, morally, it shouldn't be done or should be done. Okay, so we have advantages, disadvantages, or the third is this the push of morality. So if I do something and I see that you have a reaction that I don't want to see again, and it's not advantageous for me, I mean, it's extremely disadvantageous. So I'm going to put effort into not repeating it. So in some cases, it becomes important also for us to educate each other, which means every once in a while to say, okay, I'm sorry, this is my limit. Because if this happens, then there are consequences, and we each, react differently. For example, myself, I don't react with aggression, but if something happens, I mean, very few times it's happened, but it's not a good example what I'm about to say, but what I do, if I see at a certain point that the relationship is not good, is not good for me and it's not good for the other, then I cut. In reality, when you cut, that indifference is worse than indifference. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. The indifference is worse than aversion, because when you cut, uh, and this kind of neutrality, this kind of indifference, somehow, that's something difficult to manage. So, but for example, in my life, I've found myself in situations where I've said, okay, if you don't, if if you do, you know, if I don't want to cut completely, but I I don't know how to manage this situation as it is, and I show you what the consequences of continuing like that are. But what's important is that in that moment, when a conflict arises, we need to ask ourselves with clarity, what is it that I want? Do I want to be right? Do I want to be victorious? Because very often we are so attached to our own ego and to being right that it's just more important than anything else. I don't know how to describe that. It's like, even if something it goes wrong and many wounds and conflicts, and I'm just, metaphorically speaking, but in the end, I say, but you saw, I was right. I won. It's almost as if being right justifies everything that happened. I don't know if that concept is clear. And sometimes there are conflicts, and it's crazy, but it's like this, where at a certain point, we lose the reason for the fight, and the only thing that remains is the arm wrestling, of the two. So we don't know why the conflict came about, but what becomes important is being right. It's like I've seen this sketch sometimes in cartoons where one says it's blue, it's red, it's blue, it's red, it's blue, it's red, it's blue, and then at a certain point, and then the one who says it's blue then says it's red, and then the other one says the opposite, because what becomes important is just the opposition. And this happens sometimes because sometimes we're so attached to our ego, our being right, that we lose sight of the object of the reason for the disaccord. And what we need to ask ourselves is, what is it that I want? Do I want peace? Do I want harmony? Do I want balance? Or do I want to be the winner? Do I want to be victorious? Something that's very important for peace is, and I'm talking about this also because when we see it on the macro level, great conflicts, sometimes we get lost, and we see as if our personal reality had nothing to do with that, when instead, in on our small level, we live conflicts, we have similar dynamics, and that's where we need to work mostly. And what happens is, when you get into a conflict at a certain point, and and the objective is to be right, you lose the reason for the discussion, then to construct peace becomes very difficult. And I say construct And I don't just mean from, one country and another. No, also at home, or at work. At the basis for there to be peace is a is deep humbleness. Is the humbleness where we say, I respect, I accept that you have a different view than mine that is as valid as my own, and I'm open to listening to you. I don't know, just try to remember the last time that someone accused you of something. Someone that you accused you of something, or verbally accosted you somehow. Is that difficult to find? It's not that hard to find, is it? No, we find it. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so think about that thing. Rem- let's remember when that criticism came, that person, who accused us of something, what was our reaction? Our reaction is it, oh wow, oh good, so I can see another point of view. I can see, how others, maybe see me. Or what our reaction is to say, no, 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 you're not right. That's not like that. I'm going to show you how things are. And and then before even before even saying anything, we get into so many dialogues, just kind of conversations with ourselves. Imagine, no, because if he said this, I should have said like this, we're there protecting, we're protecting our ego with all of the weapons possible. I don't know if that's clear. Instead, let's try to imagine that same situation where we breathe for a minute, and before answering, before reacting, we remember that the point of view of the other is as valid as our own, and that what we need is to find common ground, a meeting point. And we try just for a minute to listen to the other with humbleness, which doesn't mean forgetting one's own experience and saying that what we live is not real or valid. It means to allow allow ourselves to see what the other is expressing and living. Because first I need to welcome, and then I can express my point of view. So first I I I accept, and maybe on the other side there is that space for common ground, or maybe not. If and I very often there is, because it's interesting, because we're so used to this kind of ping pong where one just attacks the other, that when I attack you and you welcome me, I'm a little dazed, and maybe the attack again. Okay, I need to attack again. Something didn't work. And then I listen to you. I accept you. I accept you in the sense that I don't get into that dynamic of getting on the defense and counterattacking. I try to listen and to understand you. I try to understand you, try to listen to you until maybe the other person can relax, because this attack counterattack isn't there. So at this point we can we can dialogue, we can talk. So something that I think is very, very important in our lives, and unfortunately it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that it's more and more lacking on both macro and micro levels, is humbleness. Because for conversation, to dialogue, we need to be able to listen more than to speak. And I often I I see that it's difficult for us to listen well, because to listen well means allowing ourselves to see the other person's point of view, to observe his experiences and seeing the other and says, okay, in your experience and the experience that you're living, there's, and I see the logic in it. I see how you can be feeling that, but me too. I have, and these, here we come to the most important points of Buddhist teachings. And I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop for a second. Now we're going to just take another idea. Reality. Not the reality that we live, but the reality that we are part of. Because if I say the reality that we are living, it's almost like there's a reality there, and it's there, and I'm living a part of reality. No, instead we are part of this reality. There's I feel like I'm the most important thing in the universe because that's how I live it. This is another subject. Reality that we are part of is a relative reality. We can spend hours talking about this, but just in a few words, the same situation exists in a different way according to who and with whom you are relating. Buddha explained that nothing exists independently from all the other relationships that exist. And the example that's given is in Tibetan parisuri, which would be this mountain and that mountain. I climb this mountain, let's use a cushion. I get on this cushion and I look at the other one, and it becomes that cushion. And then I get off of this cushion and I go to that cushion, and that cushion becomes this, and this becomes that. This cushion and that cushion, they do not exist. They don't exist without the other. They depend on each other to exist. So this exists exclusively in relation to that. And anything that exists, it doesn't exist on any level independently of everything that it interacts with. So as we're talking to each other, what I am is a result of the interactions that I have with you and with your presence in my life, and what you are and in this moment is also a result of my presence and the presence of others. It's a little bit like in Tibetan, once in a while they have this, they talk about dialectics, and just, let's say, those who study debates, kind of like the jokes of the priest, let's say, and they say, one asks, how old is your mother? And one thinks, oh, my mother, let's see, my mom, maybe, or your mother, is she older than you? And the answer is yes. But but how long has she been your mother? But before, she was just Giovanna, but she was Belle. But was she already your mother before you were born? When did she become your mother? She became your mother. She became my mother only when I was born, and so she's as old as I am, because before she was Belle, there was no mother of Lama Michel. She became mother only when I was born. So I don't know if this logic is clear. So mother exists once she has a child. There is no mother without a child, and there's no child without mother and father. So what happens is child and parent exist in this reciprocal dependency. One doesn't exist without the other. So similarly, everything that we interact with, they are the way they are exclusively in dependency on based on all the other interactions and you know and ev and then everything that that relates to the other things sees it from a different point of view. Let's try to simplify. Let's just imagine ourselves. At a certain point, we need to describe ourselves, our person. We invite all our friends, our family members, people we know well, that we interact with daily, and each one needs to describe us. Will there be two of the same descriptions? No. And when we describe ourselves, it'll be the same as, maybe there'll be similar aspects, but it won't be the same. And probably each one has these real aspects. They've picked up real aspect, but each one lives different aspects, different perspectives of us. So everything that exists in this complex net of interdependence, so-called interdependence. Nothing exists autonomously. Everything that exists exclusively in this net of relation. And what's important to understand is that this doesn't exist without that, and that doesn't exist without this. And at a certain point, it's just to say it like this, it just makes like knots in our head. Why? Because our paradigm, we think that at the basis there is something autonomous and independent. Even if we look in the history of philosophy, the history, the seeking of truth and reality. I mean, the very little that I know, but what has been told to me by those who've studied much more than me. One of the common points of like most Western philosophers, the only one that's different is the Buddhist one. They all look for an ultimate reality, something that really exists. And Buddha instead said, the problem isn't the answer. The problem is the question. The point isn't in the end, what is there? The question is there in the end? No, Buddha said, there is no autonomous reality. Everything exists. Everything exists as long as it's not analyzed. It's there as long as it's not analyzed. Danyi. When you look for something, it looks like it's there, but then if you analyze it and you can't find it. Even if we take this object, for example, which is a singing bowl, but if we took a microscope, and we divided it up at a certain point, where is the singing bowl? We lose sight of it. If we're looking for something solid, we won't find it. So what happens is everything exists in its net of interdependence and its relationship with everything that it interacts with. And in the same way, each one of us lives every moment, experiences every situation in a complex interdependence that unites our perceptions, our experiences, our senses, the culture in which we grew up in, our experiences. It's said that our perception of reality, according to Buddhism, is made up of 5 main factors. These 5 are, the first is called Rikigyuinten. These genetic characteristics. The translation would be these characteristics that come from a familial lineage. We have traits, physical traits, and also emotional and mental that come from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and many studies have shown that certain fears and traumas are actually handed down. And when I took, for example, the first time I took a small puppy, and I talked about how to how to educate the puppy, and I heard something I had never heard of, and it really opened my eyes. And and, and I see that even like just understanding animals better, we can understand ourselves better. And with the dogs, they talk about ancestral memory, which which means that, I mean, the dog is, puppy is born and knows how to do so many things that has never been taught. No one teaches her, when it's very hot, she needs to dig so she can find cool earth and so many other things, without getting into details. But what happens is the animal already has this so-called ancestral memory that was handed down, So when you see the behavior of a dog today, to understand that behavior, one should understand, the history of the previous previous generations. Say, okay, in nature they did like this, and that's why they do like this today. And we're animals, aren't we? I mean, we too have our own ancestral memory. I think so. I mean, call it what you want. In Buddhism, it's called characteristics that come from a familial lineage. Let's call it DNA. And so we have traits that have to do also with our way of experiencing living experiences, the experiences that we live. So life experience, the life experience of my parents, but even more, my grandparents and my great-grandparents, etc., has an enormous imprint on me. Much more than we can imagine. The second characteristic is called Gyunten in Tibetan. These are traits that we bring with us from life to life. These are these predispositions that we have. These are, to simplify without talking too long about it, it's like a person, for example, who spends his life lying, when he's reborn, will be prone to lying. And what's interesting is that just not too long ago, I heard an interview with a lady who was a researcher, and she did research on identical twins, but who grew up in different contexts. So she would go to find these brothers or these sisters, identical twins. But for various reasons, maybe one was raised in America and the other was raised in China. And so she was interested to see what was similar, between them. And what she was explaining was that from the DNA point of view, it wasn't like a determining realist. It was more of a probability more than determining. which means that there is this predisposition according to the environment. So, according to the environment, then that predisposition can come out or not. So two people who are genetically identical according to their life experience, one develops one characteristic and one develops another. I mean, they both have the potential, but according to the experience, one trait will come out or not. And karma is the same. So these, like, let's call them these innate characteristics that we have, that we're born with, they stay with us like little potentials, and if we meet the right conditions, they come out, and if we don't, then they don't. It's like having a seed, and a seed that doesn't meet the right conditions, it's not going to sprout. There was a beautiful story once. Lama Gangchen went to his master, Kyabchen Chichen Rinpoche, and this was in the maybe like the mid 60s, late 60s, where Lama Gangchen had left Tibet. He was in India. It was a reality of poverty. He didn't have a lot to even to eat well. As a refugee, he received he received just a little bit. He could eat once a day, or he could use that money to take transportation to see his master. It was a difficult time because even the prospects for the future seemed very chaotic. He was studying something that he didn't really like. It was a difficult time. Just imagine all of for him and for many, many other people. I mean, all his reference points just didn't exist anymore. I mean, where he lived, what to do, and, with his plans for the future. So it was a very difficult time. So he went to his master, Kyabchen Chichen Rinpoche, and he said, Rinpoche, now I think you've made a mistake. I can't be the reincarnation of Kachin and Sapenla. So he had been recognized as the reincarnation of this master. Such a highly developed being, how would it be possible for him to be in such a difficult situation? I mean, there's so many people who are so much more special than me. There's nothing special about me. And he answered saying, first of all, I have no doubt that I have no doubt about you being I have no doubt about you being the reincarnation of Kachin Sapenlam. There's also a really beautiful story about the relationship that Chichen Rinpoche had with Kachin and Sapenla. Let me just tell you. Chichen Rinpoche was the tutor of the Dalai Lama in Tibet, and before 1959 in Tibet, he was one of the most respected people, and he had a lot of power. He was incredibly well respected. You can see him here there's an image here on my left. This is an image of Chichen Rinpoche. And Rinpoche, one day, he wanted to go find this healing master at the monastery of Gangchen, his name in Kachin Tsapenla. They had written to each other a couple times. They knew of each other, but they had never had direct contact. And Chichen Rinpoche got to the monastery of Gangchen. It was received with the highest, honors. And Kachin Tsapenla was in was about 50 meters from 100 meters from the main monastery in a retreat house. He says, I'm coming through, and I'd like to see Kachin Tsapenla, who was much older than he was. And so someone went to Kachin Sempala and said, there's Trishan Rinpo here who wants to see you. And so what would you expect? Okay, right away, let's just pull out the red carpet. No, let's not make him wait at all. Instead, Kachin Sempala said, no. He said, today, no. Tell him that we will see each other soon. We will see each other soon. I mean, it's like 100 meters away. and so the answer to him was, no, we'll see each other soon. And that night, Kachin Sabanla died. Let's remember that Kachin Sabanla had prepared himself for his death. He had prepared everything for the cremation because he would say, the people around here, they're village people and they don't know how to do things well. So I need to do myself. He followed a particular diet. So even at his death and the cremation, there wouldn't be strange odors, etc. I mean, and then he, of course, died with great awareness. Why didn't he meet him? He didn't meet him so that he could create this commitment to see each other soon. So he created this positive interdependence and this commitment of Trishan Rinpoche to have to go and find his reincarnation. So anyway, Trishan Rinpoche says to Lama Gangchen, I have no doubt that you are the reincarnation of Kachin Sempanla. When one dies and one is reborn, what continues from one life to the next are these predispositions, pakcha in Tibetan. We can translate it in many different ways, like imprints. But let's use the word predisposition, like seeds. And Trishan Rinpoche said, a spiritually developed person, when he dies and is reborn, his qualities, they come up in the next life as seeds, and then depending on the conditions, they can sprout. Until they sprout. Until they sprout. If you look, if you compare yourself to someone, to another person who maybe doesn't even have those traits, you might seem the same, but your predispositions, your characteristics, they haven't come out yet. You haven't met those conditions, and we saw, all of those traits of Lama Gangchen come out. So sometimes these traits come out right at birth, and others stay like seeds for a long time until it interacts with something else, or interacts with a condition, and then sprouts. And so this is another characteristic of ourselves, and we take with us these traits from life to life. I mean, just look at two children born in the same family. I mean, you can see their personalities, their different personalities, can't you? The other day, someone said to me, my children, I'm sure that if I look at my own children, I'm sure that they are of the same parents. But if I wasn't so sure, I'd say they can't be from the same, because in Buddhism we'd say that they have different predispositions. So that's why we say, like, having a child is like inviting a stranger to come and live with you. So you call a stranger, come, let's spend the rest of our lives together. Who you are, I have no idea. Said like this, it's a little... So this is a characteristic of Buddhism. So we say in Buddhism, when one is born, it's not just a white piece of paper and everything. Then the third characteristic, Jangtob Gyunten. These are traits that we develop in our in our lifetime based on our knowledge, what we see, what we hear, what we learn, all the information that we receive that gradually shape our worldview. So there's a cultural context, social context, our education, etc., etc. There's, and you don't even need to go too far. I mean, just look at the, the last the last information that you've received, the last 24 hours. It changes our way of thinking. And the fourth one is Gyunten, and this is the information from our experiences. So no matter how much someone tells me that something is bad, if I have a direct experience with it and it's pleasurable, my feeling, my experience is that it's going to be pleasurable. So we have contradictory experiences as well, and many things we learn in life based on experience. If I drink water and I have an unpleasant experience that happened once, many years ago here in the Kunpen, I don't remember it. I don't think it was a Wednesday. It was very full. It was hot here at the Kunpen, and there was a bottle of water. I poured water for myself. I drank. I didn't make any sign, but it was salty water. And then I learned later that there was someone who had psoriasis who had taken water from the sea. And someone by mistake had taken one of her bottles of seawater and served it to me, and without realizing it. And so the next time I saw the bottle, and they said, they told me it's not salty, but there's a part of my mind that was like, be careful, it might be salty. If I drink and I burn my mouth, even if I know it's not hot anymore, I have that memory of the experience that tells me, be careful. That's normal to say. I mean, we have fears, we have traumas that we know that reality is not like that, but the experience speaks louder. So what happens is that in our worldview is not just made up of theoretical knowledge, but also of experiences. So we have genetic traits, our predispositions from life to life that are also generated in this lifetime. Also traits that come through our knowledge, and then also characteristics that come from our experiences. So take two people, these four characteristics are completely different. And, even if we grew up in the same social cultural context, and there's a fifth aspect, but normally it's not there, but I think we should talk about it because we all have different bodies and we experience the world through our senses, through our body. When someone, for example, at a certain point, it has a fever, for example, or hormonally the hormones go crazy. I mean, does reality change, or the perception of reality, does it change? Yes. Even for men. Like some would say, "Oh no, hormones," and you think right away about women. No, but I can assure you, there are many men. I see them and say, "Oh, he's having his cycle. Because he's having his period." Because you can see, for the mood, you can see that he also has a cycle that doesn't show up as strongly as it does with women, but it's there. So we are influenced. The way we experience reality is strongly influenced by our body. Just look at something simple, a color, for example. What color is this napkin? It's red, isn't it? This light is a little yellow, but it's red. Huh? Okay. Why is the napkin red? Because because it's red. I mean, let me let me let me ask you: is the napkin red, or do we see it as being red? Normally, you'd say no, the napkin's red. But what happens? I mean, why? Why? Because as human beings, we have our eyes, our 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 eye power is quite similar. So the light frequencies that touch the object and then reflect back to our eyes, I mean, we see it in a similar way. Not identically, but similar. And once I had a friend who was a graphic artist, and he used the worst color combinations, and I couldn't understand. But then I found out he was colorblind. What happens is that, like a dog, for example, for a dog, green and red are just about the same color. The way the eyes of a dog perceive the frequency of the color green and red, there's like the kind of shades of gray with no hardly any difference. So if I put these together, say, are they very different? We would say yes. But if our eyes were similar to the eyes of a dog, you know, you know, who would be right? Are they the same? Are they different? Who would be right? It really just it depends on how we see it. The reality changes according to our how we see it. So in every moment, we are perceiving reality with our DNA, our predispositions, our knowledge, our experiences, and our body. So how can we expect that someone else understands us? Have you ever heard, nobody understands me? If someone tells me that, I answer, don't worry, no one will ever understand you, because no one will ever be able to see us the way we see ourselves. It's because the basis of perception is too different. I don't know how clear this is, but there's a very important point here. So it's clear up to this point, isn't it? Now, I'm looking for an example. He'll use an example I've used many times. This object here, what is it? It's a bell that doesn't have a good sound. Here, better the singing bowl. But it's a bell, isn't it? Even if it's a little off. That we all agree that this is a bell. Let's say, but from this moment on, this object is no longer a bell. We need to use it as a cup. Can it sustain the characteristics of a cup? Can you drink a liquid from this? Yes. So maybe, okay, you can't put it on the table because it would fall over, but in some airports, for example, I've seen, cone-shaped cups, specifically so that people couldn't leave cups like half filled with liquid anywhere. So, you know, imagine as you be sure at a party, if you gave everyone cone-shaped cups, people would drink before they threw away their cups. Anyway, so it could be a cup. All right, perfect. Let's start using it as a cup. No, I'm not going to put the water in. So let's drink water, whatever, wine. We have our cup. no matter how much we see it as a glass or call it a glass and use it as a glass, how do we relate with this object? Is it a cup or is it a glass? Or is it a bell that we're using as a glass? For you, what is it? Is it a cup or is it a bell that is being used as a cup? You know, no, it's a bell we're using as a gospel. Why is it not a cup that we're using as a bell? If somebody say, well, stop playing with words, it's a bell. What's the reality here? It appears to us as being a bell independently of anything else, right? So what happens when we see someone, when we see something, that reality around us appears to us as if it exists independently, autonomously, as we see it. Let's remember that when I see this object, the object, exists to me based on these filters of the traits I talked about before. There's the genetics, the predispositions. There's my knowledge, my experience, and also my senses. And through all of that, I say this is a bell. This is a sacred object. Or maybe I've seen, maybe if I see it used in someone's house, to hold as a paperweight, and say, oh my no, that's a sacred object. Well, luckily it represents, the lack of inherent existence. But what happens is, let's just give another example to help us. I think that it's happened. I think that it happens often that you look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, here we are. Remember, we're in front of the mirror. We close our eyes, and at a certain point, we open our eyes in front of the mirror. And without philosophizing, what do we see? What do we see when we open our eyes in front of the mirror? Our face, right? If I ask you, are you seeing your face? Your answer would be right. Yes, and it's true, and it's right. We see our face in the mirror, but let's analyze for a moment. When we look into the mirror, what are we actually seeing in the mirror? Are we seeing our face or the reflection of the image of our face? It's a reflection. The light, it touches our face, goes, back to the mirror, and then from the mirror back to our eyes. Well, let's imagine that all the mirrors that we've ever used they were all curved, distorted, or yellow. And at a certain point, we see a mirror that's not yellow. We say, oh, I'm so pale. So what happens is that if we analyze what we see in the mirror, is that our face? No, it's the reflection of the image of our face in the mirror. That's clear, isn't it? So when I look in the mirror, well, I don't say, oh, it's not my face in the mirror, but it's the reflection of the image of my face. So what I see is my face, the reflection of the light. It depends also the kind of light, the form of the mirror. If the mirror is clean, if the mirror is not clean. I mean, but here does anyone have any doubt that what we see in the mirror is not our face? Because if I break the mirror, am I breaking my face? No. So it's absolutely clear that what I see in the mirror is not my face. We've understood. We're convinced. Let's close our eyes again, and we open our eyes in front of the mirror. What do we see spontaneously? It is my face. Or rather, the image in the the image in the mirror appears to us as being our face, when in reality, it tricks us, because it's not. The first time, that they showed a movie, the image was actually a train that was coming towards the audience. Just imagine that experience of, the people who had never seen a projected image. And what happens, when they showed these first scenes, I mean, people ran from the theater. They got up and ran away. And what's crazy is that today we know that those are points of light on a screen, but it appears to us as being real. That we develop attraction, aversion, and fear, even if we know that it's not like it. I mean, this means that even when I when I look in the mirror and I know it's not my face, it appears as if it is. Similarly, when we see reality around us, anything, when I see you, I'm not seeing you. I'm seeing my version of you. Because I see you through all of those filters. So I don't see you. If we see this flower and we ask this, can we all see this flower? The answer would be yes. But what I see and what you see, is it the same or is it different? It's different. Even if that sounds strange, but it's different. Appears as if it were the same, because the flower, it appears as if it were independent and autonomous. And the technical term would be intrinsic. So the flower appears to us, the bell appears to us, every object of perception appears to us as if it existed in an objective, autonomous, independent way. And we fall for this appearance, and we relate to reality as if it were like that. And we don't take into consideration that it's a subjective reality. In other words, we live within a subjective reality, and not just conceptually. I mean, based on all those characteristics we talked about before, we live in the subjective reality that appears to us as being objective, and we relate to it as if it were objective. And so what happens is, when another person comes and says, no, it's not the way you say, you're wrong. I say, no, my reality is real. And this ignorance, and it's in the real meaning of the word, not seeing, we're not able to see that the subjective reality is subjective. And this ignorance is what generates our selfishness. Because my reality is the truth. And yours, if it's not the same as mine, is wrong. And I don't have the openness of trying to understand you, because that would mean that I'm not right and that my reality is not true. So through this way of seeing reality as being objective, we put ourselves at the center of the universe. And we're not able to perceive and to relate with anything independently of the I and the my. And this is the ruin of the world. If we asked ourselves, where the wars how do the wars come out? How do the problems in the environment come out, and poverty? I mean, all these all these horrible things in the world. I mean, they come from this selfishness, with this this obsession with self-gratification, our inability to seeing others. It is and comes from that. It comes from this ignorance where reality seems to be objective when it's subjective. To see subjective reality as being objective, and then just to add a little cherry to this analysis, what is absolute reality? The only absolute reality is that there is no absolute reality. Everything is relative. The only objective reality is that everything is subjective. And now I'm going to close these brackets. So, let's go back. Now we find ourselves in conflict. Our perception of reality, and we're not aware that we're living that conflict through all of these filters. If we were able to generate that awareness, allowing us to see that that also the other is living this experience through all of his filters, then we can find this meeting point. It's always possible. Because what we want is to be in harmony. What we want is to be happy and to be well among us. This is a priority. The crazy thing is wanting to be right. This, in the sense that that my subjective reality needs to be objective. Our tendency to show that the world, that my subjective reality is objective. We look for people who perceive reality in the same way that we do. More and more to reinforce our view of reality. And the more we repeat it, and the more the others say, yes, that's true, and we see it in the same way, that point of view gets reinforced more and more, and we become less and less flexible and able to open up our minds to see different points of view. And this is propaganda function is like this. Just look at the moments that we're living. I mean, take this armed conflict that we're living now. I mean, how information is dispersed, from one side and the other. Are they coherent? Well, we don't know, because we've never heard, we've never seen the other side. I mean, is there anybody here is there somebody here who follows the news that's like pro-Ukrainian and also pro-Russian? Is there anyone who has both sides? I've never had this I've never had this possibility, and I really want peace between the two. This goes to another topic, but the point is that when we are in a conflict, we try to convince others that our point of view is correct, and the more I push to convince on one side, and the other one pushes his way to say that his is right, they become more concrete. And instead, we need to listen to the other. If what we want is peace, if we want harmony, then the first thing that we need to do is to open ourselves up to listen and see who is on the other side. This is the starting point. when there's like discussion at the workplace or at home, if we listened to the other, very often we'll see that we want the same thing but with different words. In other times, we see that that we share more than what makes us different. So we maybe we also want different things, but we can help each other, get there. There, th- if there's dialogue, then when there's dialogue, then much more often are we going to resolve conflict. So useless to talk about something that doesn't touch us in our daily lives. We need to talk about what we face daily, which is the relationships in our the relationships in our daily life, the comments we make, the relationships we have. So it's a beautiful exercise, not easy, but a really beautiful exercise when we find ourselves in front of a conflict, someone who thinks differently than us. We breathe. We don't let ourselves be taken by what comes to us spontaneously, by reacting on the defense or on the offense. When we see that impulse, we don't follow it, and we remember that reality is subjective. It's not the same for everyone. It depends on so many aspects. And if I opened myself up to listen to you, it would teach me also to know myself better. It would help me to open up my perspective, to help me to see things that I couldn't see before because I was closed in my own filters. When someone comes with a different point of view and criticizes, it's first there's a natural attitude to feel defensive, and if we're able, which could also lead to be on the defense or counterattack. It's kind of there's kind of a preventive attack. It wasn't invented by President Bush. If we were able to, if we can go beyond that and not also because if we put ourselves on the defense, then it takes us to attack. If I'm able to ask myself what's important to me, being right or finding harmony, and once I have this clarity, we can say, okay, you're right. If that helps finding a meeting point, let it be, let it happen. So one of the most Lama Gangchen Rinpoche was an amazing example of this, and he used this term, a little bit difficult to accept at the beginning, but the more I listened to it, the more I just thought he was right. He would say, he played with words, and he would say in English, he would use this play on words. He would say, we need to be ego-friendly. Not eco-friendly, but he took eco-friendly, for the environment, how do you say in Italian? Take care of the environment. No, so we need to be ego-friendly. We need to take care of the ego. And what does that mean if I'm ego-friendly with you? It means I care. I care for your ego. At first, you think it's difficult. No, we need to destroy the ego. We shouldn't give it importance. But are we selfish or not? We're attached to our worldview, aren't we? So if I need to accept you, the first the first thing I need to do is to accept you with your worldview. And when I accept you and you don't feel threatened and you feel safe, you relax your defenses. And this is the beginning for meeting, for dialogue. Once when in 1987, he was in Tibet, he was received by the Panchen Lama, who's represented here in this image. He was one of his masters. The 10th Panchen Lama in Tibet, a great power. Imagine he was imprisoned during the Cultural Revolution, and he was imprisoned together with the father of today's Chinese president of Xi Jinping. And so at the end, the father of the president came out of the prison. He had an important position, and he released him from the prison, and he put him in a very important position. You know, he allowed him. He gave him the space to do an enormous amount of positive things for the Tibetan language, for the monasteries, etc. And one day, he, he met Lama Gangchen, and he told Lama Gangchen, "I want you to meet some local people, you know, so that you'll be able to do some things here. But before we talk, we need to eat together. We need to." Because before we do business, we need to find common ground, take away our defenses. And once we see that we have more commonalities, then we see that we can talk. And so he offered a very big dinner in Shigatse. There were many people from the government. Lama Gangchen was there, and towards the end of the dinner, they were all relaxed and happy. And then he was able to say, "I dedicate a lot to the Tibet. I ask Lama Gangchen to do the same without any political motivation, but we're just interested in the welfare and you know, the education of the Tibetan people, and you need to help him." And so, you know, for 15 years, I mean, they really tested him to see that he was, you know, faithful. He always was. I mean, this is just a little parenthesis of the life of Lama Gangchen. Just to say this, that when we meet, if I don't have the openness to adapt myself to you and find, you know, commonalities, it would be hard hard for there to be dialogue. So being ego-friendly, in reality, is something very important. Our ability to be friendly with the worldview of the other, regardless of how different it is. And remember that a different worldview is not a threat. Being in front of a different view can bring two different results. If we open to that, if we open ourselves up to that view, it can transform our view, you know, and let it be, if you know, let it be so, or reinforce it, which is good too. Because if I hear a different point of view, I listen and I say, "No, that doesn't work," and so my view becomes stronger. Or maybe I listen to you and I see an aspect, you know, that I hadn't realized before. For example, once I was on the plane. I've told this story a couple of times. I was with Lama Gangchen. I was behind, and there was a man next to me. He was Russian. That has nothing to do with today's events. He was very nice, and then, but he had a great quality. He was very sincere. At a certain point, he looked at me and he said, he spoke English, but not so fluidly. But he asked me, "But are you a religious figure?" And he said, "You are so selfish." I said, okay, explain to me. Why? He says, you want easy life. Now explain to me why. Because the difficult things in life are, having to raise a family, to make ends meet, to pay taxes, take care of children. I mean, that's what's hard in life. I mean, you want to just spend your life meditating and praying. I would like to do that too. And I was listening to him, and I thought, okay, on one level, you're right. I was listening to him with an open mind, and I saw that there was a part of what he was saying that also reinforced a part of my view, because I saw that there is this danger for for those who make this choice of following, um, even Tibetan, there's some expressions that show that you should be careful about not falling into this trap. And then there was also this aspect that Lama Gangchen has always taught me, which is to be at the service, always to be at the service of others. But this isn't the point. The point is that he showed me an aspect that's important, and personally, I need to protect myself from this. And I saw when someone dedicates, when someone who dedicates himself to religious lifestyle, it has success, when, it never works when a person tries to escape from reality, to follow a religious lifestyle. I've seen this a lot. One goes to the monastery because they don't know what to do. They're not successful in their relationships as a couple. Like, that never works. Once I was in the monastery. There was a boy. He came to me. I had been there for many years, and he said, "I never understood why you're here." Okay, explain to me what you mean. He said, "You're handsome, you're rich, and you're rich and intelligent. What are you doing here?" And at that moment, I was a little confused, and I said, "Well, if you haven't understand, if after all the years, that you've spent here in the monastery, if you can't understand, I'm not the one who's going to explain it to you. But there are two there there are two dangers. One can try to escape the mundane life, follow a religious lifestyle as an escape. That's not going to work. Or one tries to find the mundane within a spiritual lifestyle. One thinks they've created a spiritual lifestyle, but there's nothing spiritual because they get comfortable. They get comfortable in in the mundane aspects of power and pleasure, and I don't know if that's clear. So that man, he wasn't completely wrong. I could have said, "Oh, well, how can you don't know me. What are you saying? We follow, the way of the the way of bodhicitta," but instead allowing myself to listen to someone who thinks differently without becoming defensive, that helps us open our mind and have more clarity. So we shouldn't be afraid of those who think differently. We should be afraid of surrounding ourselves with those who think the same as we do, because that is going to continuously reinforce our closed-minded way of thinking, our way of thinking. So let's remember that reality is found among the realities, and there is not one reality. There's it's made of reality is made of many different realities, and it's important to understand one, understand the other, to be open. But beyond, it's just, when we see big conflicts, let's look at our own personal conflicts. I imagine that most of you live with someone else. And even those of you who live alone, you have relationships at work or with your family. I mean, how often do we have conflict because we have different points of view? From, even like what TV program to watch. I mean, these small things to, oh, this should be put here. No, this needs to go there. Or where should we go on vacation? What happens if the more we're attached and tight to attached to our point of view, the more we're pulling towards the imbalance. Instead, if we're able to be more ego-friendly, and we open ourselves up towards the other and not put ourselves on the defense and try to understand the point of view of the other to or reinforce our own point of view or to change it, but without putting these two points of view in opposition, even if there's no consolation, even if they're different, then we accept each other, and there aren't any problems. It's important for us to listen to the other, to see the other. This. If we want harmony, it's a must. Otherwise, we're just going to close ourselves up more and more in ourselves. It will create more and more our own world instead of sharing with others. Because, just to give you a very simple example, when TV came into the living rooms of families, I mean, at the beginning, how many TVs were there in a home? There was one. If there was one. If there was one, there was one TV. And there was the moment, like we sit down and we watch TV. First of all, and there were very few programs, so it was easier. So there wasn't much to talk about. Those were the programs. And there was this moment where the family would come together to watch TV, and the became more affordable, and today what happens? Each one sees what he wants. You've got, you have your TV in your room or on your computer on your TV, and you watch, each one watches his own, because I want to do what I like. And we create, more and more, we're creating our own worlds. It's a reflection of what I am, what I want, instead of sharing our world with others. This sharing brings us much more than just closing ourselves up in our small world. Just look how architecture has changed. Homes, a couple decades ago, they had a big living room, a big kitchen, and small bedrooms, and very few bathrooms. Today, there's mostly in the city. It's a very, very small kitchen because people eat out. The living room is smaller, and the bedrooms are bigger. The bedrooms are big, and each bedroom has his own bathroom. I remember our trips to Tibet, and I hope we can go back soon. I remember we'd get to the monastery. One of the biggest sufferings was the bathrooms. It's true. There were times, it was quite extreme. There was this one time, we were at like over 5,000 meters, already physically very difficult. There were no bedrooms. There was just a huge one, big room with just like one mattress attached to the other, because if we didn't put like this, then people would have to sleep in the corridor. I was in the same room with Lama Gangchen and other people too, and we were about 100 people. There was one bathroom that was just outside. There was a detail here. In the morning, to go to the bathroom, I mean, there were many of us, and even in Tibet, I mean, there were those who even in Tibet at 5,000 meters needed 45 minutes, but that's just a detail. There was another point to get to the bathroom in the morning, when even before we woke up, before dawn, they were, without exaggerating, there were about 300, 400 people outside the room that wanted Lama Gangchen's blessings, and they were just massed, crowded there. And even but to go to the bathroom, he needed to bless each one before he got to the bathroom. And at the end, then we needed to have like have a like a vase, to be able to use in the room. At the beginning, it was a tragedy. I can't stay here. How am I going to do it? How could I stay here? How can I stay here? After the 5th or 6th day, and the situation in the bathroom didn't get any better, nobody wanted to leave. And the bathroom wasn't important anymore, because when there's something deeper that makes us feel good, these small things, they just lose importance. Instead, what happens is we have this tendency to create our little world where I have my comfort, my pleasures. I want to do things as I want them, when I want them, and it just doesn't work. And I'm just going to quickly, open here in brackets, quickly. There are different studies, I was told, that show that one of the things that generates stress is taking decisions. When we need to make a decision, there's a moment of stress, because for a moment I open myself up to, this or that. Would it be better to do this, or would it be, or better to do that? So there's a tension that's created when we're faced with a choice. Modern Western world, rich reality, has an enormous quantity of stress generated from choices that we need to make. It seems almost worse to find the movie than watch the movie. In the past, we turn on TV. What's on TV? You have 3 possibilities, so you watch that. Now you have thousands of choices, and at the end, it's hard to find something. No, there's nothing. No, it's not that there's nothing. You go to the supermarket. What do I buy? What brand? This one's more expensive. This one costs less, but maybe it's a better quality, But is it really organic? Does it need to be organic? I don't know. Or I get to the restaurant. What do I choose to eat? I like that, but it's not healthy. Okay, that's good for me, but I don't really like it. But it's so expensive. If I'm going to spend that much, I better take something that I really like. I mean, all these stress before just to choose something that we eat, and every choice generates stress. We don't realize this. For example, I've seen you know, just, knowing like the story of modern people, not religious people, but, people who had great levels of responsibility, people would work, with those who have to take very, very heavy decisions. And they were saying that, like, the energy they would put into choosing what they needed to eat, and the energy that they needed to, put in the energy in choosing, where they were going to invest the billions of dollars, it was like the same, So they would simplify their lives. Like, for example, I remember it's one scene of this life story of one of these men. He had all of his clothes were exactly the same, because that having to choose just took up more space in his life. And we have this idea that having more freedom to choose gives us more space, but it's not true. In one study, for example, they had given some kind of prize, like, you buy something, and then you buy something, and then there was a prize, and the prize was a trip. And they did this study. They had 3 different types. You could win the trip, but you couldn't choose where or when to go. So if you won that trip, it was in that place and this date, accept or not. The second prize, you could choose when to go, but you couldn't choose where. And then in the third prize, you could choose among a certain number of destinations and when. And at the end, they asked people, they asked the level of sort of satisfaction based on the trip. So who was the happiest of the trip? The first one, the first group. Because when I had to choose when, maybe we think, oh, it would have been better to go at this other time. Oh, you see, okay, it rained. I chose the wrong time to go. When I choose where, and then I increase the probabilities of making problems for myself. Oh, see, the food here wasn't good. Oh, the food would have been better. Oh, you see, here it's raining, and we should have looked, gone somewhere where it was warmer. Instead, when you can't choose, well, they gave me a vacation. Oh, it rains. It's okay. It was a prize. So having more possibilities doesn't mean being more satisfied. Just to conclude and to close this circle, we close up. We want to make our own world, when in reality we're better off when we share. But sharing means also adapting, allowing ourselves to adapt to others, find meeting points, what you like, what I like, the when, and what gives us joy most often is sharing. This is the act of sharing more than that specific thing. So harmony and peace is not just about getting over the conflict, but it should be constructed by finding these meeting point, common ground. Harmony should be cultivated. It should be constructed, built. It's not. It takes a lot of work, and we shouldn't take it for granted. It's a lot harder to create peace and harmony than conflict. Conflict is easy. Maintaining peace, creating harmony is much more difficult, but it brings much better results, and it's much less costly than living at war. Even if it's it costs more to build peace than to build war. If in our life, if we choose with awareness to build peace, then an important point is to be less arrogant, less selfish, open ourselves up to the point of view of others, listen to others, try to listen to the other people's point of view, even if we maintain our own. But okay, I want to listen also to yours, and I'm not going to put myself immediately on the defense. And in my daily life, if we're able to do this with small things, you'll see that it brings amazing and beneficial results. And someone would say, well, Lama, it's not difficult. I'm sure Lama, people might say, Lama, it's difficult. Yes. Yes, nobody said that it would be easy. Like we say in Tibetan, if you stand up, you're going to hit your head. If you sit down, you're going to hit your tush. So staying in the conflict is not easy. Building peace is not easy either. It's difficult. It's tiresome, but it's so beneficial and pleasurable. So somehow, I mean, we need to put energy in something. So building peace, peace, balance, and harmony instead of this polarized, conflict. And so this has to do with our relationships, but also with our worldview. We have to be careful with the information we receive and not allow ourselves to be easily manipulated in one direction or another. If there's something that we want to deepen, we need to listen to all the bells. Okay, we look left, we look left and right, up and down. Let's learn about it and not take things for granted and just jump to conclusions without knowing more. But this is important, For example, I'm against violence because I think from my experience, it doesn't bring well-being to anyone. If you bring me a conflict in front of me, I don't know, let's look. And we'll see that everybody's right and everybody's wrong. But the point isn't who's right. The point is how can we find harmony? And remember, when we cannot find harmony if both parties don't open themselves up. In Portuguese, we uses the term that says we need to offer also something to someone else. So in our daily lives, let's apply this, and let's remember that we're living times where we have in politics, or I mean, look what happened with the vaccines, for example. We have just very polarized ideas, more and more. I'm not going to get into details whether I'm, favorable or not, and I don't have the knowledge to say really. But what I see is there's a huge polarization. I mean, there are different points of view, and each one more and more. They've made like two fronts, and they're shooting at each other, on personally, and then like between people and like within the society. That's a little bit what I wanted to say. It's time for our dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi nam karatin le chokchur gepadang losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsela takto negure chi kewa kuntu yanda lamadang rame cheki pela longche ching sada lamge yente rabzone Dorje change kopa nyurtobu sho nimo delets Nime kunyan delek shi ninsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke jingi lobo kuncho sumke ngodrubo sol kuncho sumke trashisho. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Una cosa solo che volevo ricordare.
Just something that I'd like to thank everyone, and I want to rejoice. It's the first Wednesday we have without any booking, and this makes me quite happy. And gradually, we won't have these problems of, of all these problems. Of course, we'll be careful, but this problem of distancing. And I'd like to also make some advertising. There'll be 2 moments this summer. We're going to have the summer camp for kids. And I think it's something very important because it's a moment where we create a condition for children not to learn about Buddhism, because it's not a Buddhist camp. There are Buddhist camps where you take refuge and, you learn how to be, a good Buddhist, externally. But our choice is, it's a summer camp, where there's playful activities that help the children reflect on aspects of spirituality that go beyond, religion, many beautiful activities. And so this is something that's a wonderful opportunity, I think, also because when we're little, when we're young, we're we learn much more, much more receptive, and we can learn so much more than any masters or at any university. And so we're here also to be at the service of those who are living their early years. So thank you, everyone. See you next week. Okay, thank you.